Hey there everyone. Today we want to go through Hosea chapter 1, and this is kind of in response to people who were asking how I got the name for this channel, Latest News for Mother, but it's also just to go through the prophecy because it's important to go through. So anyways, Hosea chapter 1 and 2 are one prophecy. So in this video it's going to be chapter 1, and then we're going to go through chapter 2 in the next video, which will be linked to in the description box below. So anyways, I invite you to pray before we get into it, and keep an open mind, and we'll see what the scriptures have to say. Okay, so we're just going to start by reading all of chapter 1, and then we're going to go back and go over it a little bit more in detail. So anyways, verse 1, it says, "The word of the Lord that came unto Hosea the son of Beeri in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said unto Hosea, Go, take unto thee a wife of whoredoms, and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredoms, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Davidian, which conceived and bare him a son. And the Lord said unto him, Call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. And it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. And she conceived again, and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, Call her name Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah, and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen. Now when she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived, and bare a son. Then said God, Call his name Lo-Ammi, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered nor measured. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Then the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together, and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel." Okay, so we can see here that this chapter is a story which shows Hosea taking unto himself a wife Gomer and bearing 3 children with her, Jezreel, Lo-Ruhamah, and Lo-Ammi. And these children's lives are depicting the story of Israel, as we kept on seeing, as it kept mentioning as we went through the chapter. Now, what we're going to have to do is find out when this prophecy is for, okay? And we're going to, I'll say right now it covers a larger period of time, but when is it intended for? When is it intended to be understood? And who is it profitable for? So we're just going to go to Hosea chapter 2, verse 18, just for a quick point, and then we'll go back through Hosea 1. And this is because Hosea 2 is a natural continuation of Hosea 1. Verse 18 of Hosea 2 says, "And in that day will I make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground, and I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely." Question: has that verse come to pass? I think anyone can clearly see no. When is it that God has made since Hosea wrote it, when is it that God has made a covenant with the beasts of the field for somebody's sake, so that they'll lie down safely? And when has he taken the battle and the war and the sword out of the earth? When has that happened? Since Hosea wrote it? Well, never really. So that was the point of that. It's future from our time. So not necessarily that the whole prophecy is, but showing that's when it's intended for, and that's what it points to. So we're going to get there. Now, going back over Hosea 1, we're going to see where it takes us. Okay? Let's just start at verse 2. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, Go, take unto thee a wife of whoredoms, and children of whoredoms, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So first you see a woman, and the woman here, of course, let's just ask, what is a woman a symbol of in the scriptures? And this is actually one of the most easy to see places, but there's other places, Jeremiah chapter 6 verse 2, Revelation 12, Revelation 17. We're not going to go through everything for sake of time, but most Bible students recognize that a woman is a symbol of a church or God's people. But this is a woman of whoredoms, who has children of whoredoms, and then it's going through explaining what happened with Israel and Judah, right? So we can tell this woman is the people that were set aside, but yet they're people of whoredoms, right? So taken unto the Lord as a wife, because the Lord, of course, in this situation, since he's portraying his relationship with his people, and he's portraying it through Hosea, Hosea, in the symbolism, is representing the Lord, Yahweh, the God of Israel. And Hosea takes unto him this wife, Gomer, and bears children. So at some point, there was separated a people unto the Lord. And we can see this clearly when we go back to Genesis. We won't go through the whole thing here. But everyone knows, after the flood, you had Babylon, or Tower of Babel, set up, and you had people basically divided. The earth was divided. People were divided. The nations, the languages were confused, and people were set to go their own ways. And the Lord took out a nation for himself, and he called out Abraham. And you can read about this in Genesis chapter 11 and 12. And so he called Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees, which is actually Babylon, and brought out a people unto himself. So that's what we see happening in this symbolism, with Gomer being the one that was taken unto Hosea, right? And she bears children, which we're going to see in a second. And they're all called people of whoredom. And if you want more information on this and why they're accused of whoredom, please just go and check out a video I have on Ezekiel chapter 16. Actually, a 3-part video there. Okay, so verse 3, continuing on, it says, So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. Okay, so we find out that Hosea did just this. And verse 4 says, And the Lord said unto him, Call his name Jezreel. For yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. Okay, so we have Jezreel, the son of Gomer, and also son of Hosea, and it says, For yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu. So Jezreel was, slain in some sense. I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu. And who's Jehu? Well, in order to correctly understand this, we need to go to the Kings and kind of refresh our memory on the stories. So let's go to 2 Kings chapter 9, verses 4 to 10. And I'm going to invite you to read a larger context here, but this will do for now. Okay, chapter 9 of 2 Kings, verses 4 to 10. It says, So the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting. And he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, Unto which of all us? And he said, To thee, O captain. And he arose and went into the house. And he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord. even over Israel. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. Alright, so that's setting up the story of what happened. We see that Jehu was a captain in Israel, and he was appointed by this young man, this young prophet, by the Lord through this young prophet, to be king over Israel and to avenge the blood of the prophets that was shed by Jezebel, right? And it was to be in the valley of Jezreel, according to verse 10. And so this is what we're about to see was happening here. And then that says in verse 4 of Hosea 1, And the Lord said unto him, Call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. So what's this thing about avenging the blood? Well, let's go to 2 Kings chapter 10, verses 11 and 28 to 32. And again, this is just a summary. Verse 11 of chapter 10 of 2 Kings says, So Jehu slew all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men, and his kinsfolk, and the priests, until he left him none remaining. So Jehu actually did what the Lord had requested, and slew the house of Ahab to avenge the blood of the prophets. So who does Jezreel represent then? Well, what happened in Jezreel? Well, that's where it was avenged. So Jezreel represents the prophets. Jezreel, son of Gomer, represents the prophets. We're going to look at verse 28 to 32 as well in this same chapter. It says, Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. Howbeit, from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, Jehu departed not from after them, to wit, the golden calves that were in Bethel, and that were in Dan. And the Lord said unto Jehu, Because thou hast done well in executing that which is right in my eyes, and hast done unto the house of Ahab according to all that was in mine heart, thy children of the fourth generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of the Lord God of Israel with all his heart, for he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, which made Israel to sin. In those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the coasts of Israel. So you see here what happened with Jehu and the house of Ahaz and in the valley of Jezreel. All of that, after that took place, is when it said that's when the Lord started to cut Israel short, which is what we just saw in verse 4 of Hosea 1, right? That he would avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and upon the house of Jehu. Why? Because Jehu, although he did execute the Lord's judgments in the valley of Jezreel, he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, right? He didn't get rid of the idols that were in Bethel and Dan. And so he also had to receive the punishment of the Lord. And that's when he begun to cause to cease the kingdom of Israel as from being a kingdom. And we see that more a little bit further on. We just saw that that's when it begun. But when we go to 2 Kings verse 17, what we see there, 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 23, it says, Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. So we see that Israel, the 10-tribe kingdom, was carried away out of their own land by the Assyrians. And you can also read chapter 18, verse 11 of 2 Kings, says the same thing. And there's other places, but basically the history is that after the Exodus and after the days of Joshua and the days of the judges, when Israel had gone and conquered Canaan, and for the most part conquered Canaan, and then the monarchy was brought in, right? We have Saul and David and Solomon. After Solomon, the kingdom was divided, right? The kingdom of Israel was divided into two houses, the house of Israel and the house of Judah. The house of Israel was the northern kingdom, the house of Judah was the southern kingdom. And you had Rehoboam and Jeroboam who were ruling those respective parts. And so what we have is this in Hosea is telling us the story of what happened. So moving to, the end of verse 4 is where it says, and he will cause the kingdom of Israel to cease. So that's basically leading us close up to the time of the Assyrians taking away the 10 tribes. Although more particularly verse 4 is leading us up to the time of the end of Jehu's reign, where he started to cut short the house of Israel. Verse 5 says, and it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel, which is what we were reading about, right? And the bow of Israel, the bow, of course, is representing the military strength and so on. And the bow of Israel, of course, would be the princes of Israel. And these are the things that we were reading about. But you can read about more 2 Kings, just read all of chapter 10 and 11. And also, of course, we saw that he will break it in the valley of Jezreel, which is just what happened. Now, the valley of Jezreel is the valley where the blood of the prophets was avenged. So to break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel is showing that the reason why they were being broken is because they had rejected the word of the Lord through the prophets, right? Because Jezreel represents the prophets. The valley of Jezreel is where the prophets' blood was avenged, and that's where the bow of the house of Israel was to be broken. So this, in that day, showed that they had refused to listen to the prophets, and therefore they had to receive the judgment of God, which of course is typical of what will happen to those in our day who likewise refuse to hear the prophets of God. So we need to keep these things in mind and be aware of our own history. We need to be aware of the history of what's gone on in the past and learn the lessons from the past. Have the mistakes of the past be our stepping stones to success, rather than falling into the same trap that they fell into. So moving on into verse 6 of Hosea 1, it says, and she conceived again, and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her name Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Okay, so now we see Lo-Ruhamah. The word lo in Hebrew, it's a negation. It means no or not, right? And then Ruhamah means having mercy. Lo-Ruhamah means not having mercy, which is why it says, call her name Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel. So Lo-Ruhamah was to signify that the house of Israel would be taken away from their land, because the land has committed great whoredoms, according to verse 2. And so we saw in the Kings how that already happened. Verse 7 says, but I'll have mercy upon the house of Judah, and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword, nor by battle, nor horses, nor by horsemen. So although Israel, the 10 tribe northern kingdom, was cast away and taken from their own land by the Assyrians, he says, I'll have mercy on Judah, right? And so how did that happen? Well, of course, we have when the Assyrians came, they were protected. And we're not going to go and read the whole thing, but you can read this in 2 Kings chapter 19, verses 1, verse 15, verses 19 and 20, and verse 35, or you can just read all of chapter 19 and you'll see how the Lord had mercy on Judah when he used Assyria to go and scatter Israel. He protected Judah, and not by a bow, etc., etc. You see, when the Lord came against the Assyrians to help Judah, he sent the angel, right, to destroy the 185,000 Assyrians. And you can read again 2 Kings 19. You can read about that. And again, of course, he had mercy on Judah for a while. I mean, they had to go into Babylonian captivity eventually. But he had mercy on them again in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, in the days of Zechariah and Haggai, Zerubbabel, right? He had mercy on them to bring a remnant of Judah back to their land. So Judah had received mercy. Moving on to verse 8, now when she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, she conceived and bare a son. Then said God, call his name Lo-Ammi, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. So let's just quickly recap. We had the mother, Gomer, representing God's people, taken out. We had Jezreel representing the prophets. And then we had Lo-Ruhamah, which what happened to Lo-Ruhamah was signifying what would happen to Israel, the 10 tribes. So Lo-Ammi, clearly then, is signifying what's happening to Judah. Ye are not my people. Now, what is this that's being said? Judah, the ones that remained, all of a sudden are no longer the people of God? Well, it says, of course, in Matthew chapter 23, verses 37 to 39. Let's see what it says there. And this is Jesus speaking. Matthew 23, 37 to 39. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which was the capital of Judah, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, till ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So we see here that Judah had their house, the house of Judah, left unto them desolate. It had become desolate. Why? Because they killed the prophets, right? They did the same thing that Israel did, the northern kingdom, right? They weren't listening to the prophets, and now neither is Judah. So you see, these two, siblings here aren't too good to their other sibling, Jezreel, right? They aren't really treating him nicely. And so because of that, it was said unto Judah, ye are not my people. And that's, again, Lo-Ammi, right? The word Ammi means my people. Lo is not, so not my people in Hebrew. Going to verse 10, it kind of brings to us, in Hosea 1, verse 10, it's indicating something here. It says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass, that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Okay, so now this is saying something. And we know I'll just put it like this, most of Christianity knows that the house of Judah became desolate. Why? Because they rejected the prophets, and of course they rejected the Messiah, right? So the house of Israel was left unto them desolate. But now here it's saying, yet, and if it starts off saying yet, it's saying but, yes, it was left to them desolate. However, so there's something else. It's not just that. Usually today we think of it as, left unto them desolate, now they're done, and now we have the church. When really the church is something that long pre-existed Christianity and pre-existed Judaism and pre-existed even Abraham, right? So the church has existed for a very long time, which if you check out the playlist on this channel called What is the Church, that will give you more of what I'm saying on that. So what is this? That this house of Judah, even though it was said unto them, ye are not my people, it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. Well, how does one become son of God? If we go to 1 Peter chapter 2, actually, you know what? Just for sake of time, let's just go to John chapter 1, verse 12. Okay. John chapter 1, verse 12. It says, but as many as receive him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. And him being the word. You can read it in context. Those who receive the word, to them gives he power to become the sons of God. Right? So we become the sons of God through entering into Christ. So those who were cast off can still enter. And those, some did. I mean, we saw the apostles, and we saw the majority of those who came into, the faith of the Messiah in the early days of what is called today Christianity. Those who first came in for about the first 3.5 years were all Jews, the majority of them. And there was some of Israel as well. So it was said unto them that were not my people, ye shall be you shall be called the sons of the living God. And it says that their seed shall become numerous as it was promised to Abraham. So this is saying, even though the house of Israel was scattered by the Assyrians, even though the house of Judah, they went into Babylon, but then they received mercy, and yet they, even after that, became no longer the people of God. Yet, despite all that, the promises to Abraham will still be fulfilled, that his seed shall be as numerous as the sand of the sea and the stars of heaven. And in the very place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the children of the living God. So, if you want to understand more about this, please go check out the videos I have on the pre-millennial kingdom, and it will really broaden the perspective here. But what we see is that just taking it as straightforward as it reads, because isn't that what we want to do? We want to just read the Bible and believe it for what it says. So we should take this and not just think, oh yeah, this is just, of course, that it just go in one ear, out the other. We should realize, wait, what is this saying? Wait, okay, so these people, Judah, it was said to them, ye are not my people. But this promise to Abraham will still be fulfilled, and in the very place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Where is that place that it was said unto them, ye are not my people? Well, we just heard Jesus saying it in Matthew 23, and where was he? Well, of course, he was in the land of Judah. He was in Judea, he was in Jerusalem, and he said, your house is left unto you desolate, right? So in that very place, it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God. Has that been fulfilled? Have the promises to Abraham been truly fulfilled? And notice verse 11, because some might say, oh, that's already happened in 1948 or at some other point or something along those lines. But in verse 11 it says, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together. So we have both the children of Israel and the children of Judah, both houses. Read Ezekiel 37. It shows that both sticks of the houses of Israel and Judah will be joined together, right? And it says, and then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land. For great shall be the day of Jezreel. Interesting. It's showing all three children in that verse, is it not? It's showing you'll have Lo-Ammi, Lo-Ruhamah, only their names will be changed, Ammi and Ruhamah, as we'll see in the next chapter. Coming together, children of Judah and Israel, gathering together into one place, that same place where it was said to them, ye are not my people, and they'll appoint themselves one head, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Interesting. Now, let me ask you just a question here. Does it make sense if Israel and Judah, both of them, were cast aside and said, I'll no more have mercy on you. You are not my people. You're scattered from your land. It doesn't make sense if the reason why they were scattered was for killing and rejecting and not listening to the prophets. Would it make sense for them to be gathered back while they're still doing that? Doesn't really make sense, does it? Now, here's another question. Has there ever been a time in all the scriptures where God has delivered his people without a prophet? Now, if you're unsure about that, I have a playlist on this channel called What is the Spirit of Prophecy? You can go and check that out. And there, I believe it's either in What is the Spirit of Prophecy by example or What is the Spirit of Prophecy in the Old Testament. One of those two videos, I go through the book of Judges, and if you go and check it out, you'll see what it's talking about, but it shows very clearly that the pattern was that when Israel rebelled, they went into bondage, they had no prophets, and then when it came time for them to be delivered, the Lord always rose up a prophet to deliver them. Right? You see the same thing with the rebuilding of the Second Temple, with Zechariah and Haggai. So it makes sense then, right, for it to say, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. In other words, that's the day when they're stopping. Israel and Judah will no longer be killing the prophets. So now Jezreel can be there without having to be persecuted and killed. Great shall be the day of Jezreel, right? And so what is this also that it says, first of all, have any of those things happened yet? Have we seen both the children of Judah and the children of Israel gather together into one place and said unto them in the same place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, that they are the children of the living God? Has that happened? Are we really in the day of Jezreel yet, if we understand what that is? And also, why does it say, and appoint themselves one head, right? Well, if we keep reading in Hosea, it'll be very clear who that's talking about. I'll just read here Hosea chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without teraphim. Afterward shall the children of Israel return, and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord their God, the Lord and his goodness, in the latter days. So clearly, that's a latter-day prophecy. We saw verse 4, of course that's already happened. Israel has been dwelling many days without a king, without a sacrifice, without an ephod, without teraphim, etc., etc. But it says afterward, Israel will return and they'll serve the Lord their God. They'll serve, God, and it says David their king. Seek after the Lord their God and David their king. So who is this David the king that's going to be there in the latter days? Well, David of old is already dead. Peter made that pretty clear. And here, Hosea, this is prophesying after David. So who's this David? And this is spoken of in all the prophets. You read Jeremiah chapter 30, and what does it say? It shows you that there's this time of Jacob's trouble as Jacob, Israel, and Judah are being gathered back to their homeland, and there's this time of Jacob's trouble, and then he'll be saved out of it, and the yoke will be broken off Jacob's neck. And then verse 9 it says, but they shall serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. So we have the Lord their God and David their king. And then of course there's many more prophecies about this. Read all of Ezekiel 34. That'll make it pretty plain. Ezekiel chapter 34. Ezekiel 37, you remember how I mentioned about the two sticks? Well, right after it explains this issue of the two sticks, it says in, I'll just read this quickly here from verse 20. And the sticks whereupon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. And say unto them, thus saith the Lord their God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and will bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. And they shall dwell therein, even they and their children, and their children's children forever. And my servant David will be their prince forevermore. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and I will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. So this is really straightforward, doesn't need much comment. Either we're going to accept the Bible, or we're not going to accept the Bible. Was Hosea a false prophet? Was Ezekiel a false prophet? Was Jeremiah a false prophet? Or are these guys telling the truth? It's up for you to decide if you're going to believe it or not. So, like I said, there's more that can be said about, read Isaiah 55 verses 3 and 4, showing about the one who will be appointed over them, and this David and so on. So I just want you to consider all these things and ask yourself, what is the scripture really saying? Do you find it offensive? Do you find it offensive that this people who is said unto them, ye are not my people, that it will be said unto them, they are the sons of the living God? Does that bother you? If it does, why is that? Why is it that you don't want to believe it? Really think about it. Just suppose for a minute, even if you're thinking it's not true, suppose it is. Suppose that the scripture is just saying what it is, and, it is what it is, right? Why is that an issue? Why would you want to believe something else? Why would you want to twist this? I'm just asking because many people don't want to accept it as it reads. They want to twist it into saying this thing or that thing, or saying, no, the Lord won't keep his promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's all Old Testament stuff. That's done away with. And no, what do you mean we're going to go back into the land and we're going to keep all the statutes and judgments, like it said in Ezekiel 37? I thought all those things were done away. Well, were they? It's a real question. Were they? And I'm asking because I want you all to consider these things and just ask is the truth really what you thought it was? And is there a day of Jezreel to come? I thought there was supposed to be no more prophets. I thought the children of Israel, they were done away with. The commandments and statutes, they were done away with. The prophets, they were done away with. The land of Israel, that was done away with. All these things we keep thinking are done away with when the prophets keep saying, no, that's not done away with. That's coming back. This thing has been trampled underfoot, but it's going to be restored, right? So just because something's been taken away doesn't mean it's away forever. And that's just one quick thing to finish on is Isaiah chapter 54. Isaiah 54, verse 7. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. And then chapter 55, verses 3 and 4, just because we were there. Incline your ear, and come unto me. Hear, and your soul shall live. And I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David. Behold, I have given him for a witness to the people, a leader and a commander to the people. Notice here, it says, incline your ear, and come unto me, hear, and your soul shall live. The Lord is asking just to hear him. to hear and consider what he's saying. He says in Isaiah chapter 1, "Come, let us reason together." Right? So let us do that. Let's put away our preconceived ideas and let's, reason with the Lord. Anyways, this video is a little bit longer than I was originally intending. Hopefully you're not too bothered by it. But Lord bless you. And yeah, any questions or comments, leave them below or send me a message and we'll discuss things. All right, blessings.